The war on planet Vikran 7 had been going on for 6 months. Smoke filled the air. Buildings were in ruins. Explosions could be heard every few hours. Many soldiers had died. Many missions had failed. Now, a very important scientist, Dr. Zeltar, was taken hostage by a deadly alien group called the Gorak Horde. Dr. Zeltar was not just any scientist. He knew secrets about advanced weapons. If the enemy forced him to talk, millions could die. A rescue mission had to be planned. In the military base, Commander Travak, a strong alien with silver skin and sharp eyes, looked at the screen. It showed a photo of Dr. Zeltar and his last known location, a bunker deep in enemy land. Travak looked around the room. His team of elite soldiers stood waiting. All were trained killers. All had failed before. "This is our last chance," Travak said. "If we fail, the war may be lost." The room went silent. Then, the Admiral's voice came through the speaker. "You will include a human on this mission." Everyone looked confused. "A human?" One soldier whispered. "Why? They're slow, weak," another said. "They don't even have scales." Travak clenched his fists. "This is a mistake," he growled. "Humans are unpredictable." But the order was final. No one could refuse. Hours later, a ship landed outside. The door opened, and out walked a man wearing dark armor. He had a scar over his eye and a relaxed smile on his face. His name was Sergeant Kane, human, earthborn, and battle-tested. He walked into the base like he didn't care about the danger. Travak met him with cold eyes. "We don't need you," he said. Kane just smiled. "That's what they all say, at first." The team didn't like him. They didn't trust him. But Kane didn't seem to mind. They gathered in the briefing room. A map appeared on the table. "The target is being held here," Travak said, pointing to a red zone. "High enemy activity, landmines, drones, 2 failed missions already." Kane looked at the map. "So a walk in the park," he said casually. Travak growled. "This is serious." "I know," Kane replied. "That's why I'm here." The team prepared their gear. They checked weapons, loaded scanners, and set the route. Kane only packed a small bag and a knife. "Where's your plasma rifle?" One alien asked. "Don't need it," Kane said. The soldiers shook their heads. "Humans are crazy," someone muttered. As night fell, the extraction team left in a stealth ship. Their mission: get in, get the scientist, and get out fast. They landed 10 kilometers from the enemy bunker. The terrain was rocky, covered in red dust and broken metal. The wind howled. Kane moved like he had done this 100 times. The team slowly moved forward, dodging drones and traps. At one point, a flying droid appeared. Before anyone could move, Kane picked up a stone and threw it. The drone crashed. Everyone stared at him. "What?" Kane said. "I played baseball." As they got closer to the enemy base, Travak gave the signal to stop. "We wait here. I will scan the area." But Kane didn't stop. He kept walking forward. "Hey!" Travak shouted. "What are you doing?" Kane turned his head. "I'm going in." "Are you insane?" another soldier yelled. "You'll get killed." Kane smiled. "Maybe, but I've got a plan." He walked toward the enemy base, alone, unarmed. The aliens inside the base noticed him on their cameras. "Is that the human?" One guard asked. "Yes," another replied. "And he's walking straight to us. Is it a trap?" "No." "Idea." Inside the stealth ship, the team watched in shock. Travak slammed his fist on the table. "He's going to blow the whole mission." Kane reached the enemy gate and stopped. A large alien with red armor stepped out. The warlord. He had a giant gun and glowing eyes. Kane raised his hands. "I'm here to talk," he said calmly. The warlord laughed. "Talk? You're just a human." "Exactly," Kane replied. "And that's why you should listen." The screen in the ship went black. No signal. Trevok said. He's inside. Everyone was silent. Was Kane captured? Was he killed? Or did he have something planned? They didn't know it yet, but this mission, the one no one wanted, was about to change everything. Asterisk the moment the screen went black. The air inside the stealth ship turned cold with silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Trevok stared at the empty screen, waiting for something, anything. A signal, a sound, a sign that the human hadn't just walked to his death. The other soldiers shifted uncomfortably. They didn't like this. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't training. This was madness. But Sergeant Kane? He had walked into enemy territory like he was on a casual stroll through a park. Inside the enemy base, alarms had been silenced. The guards didn't fire. The warlord, massive and armored, watched Kane approach with a mix of confusion and curiosity. This human, small, weaponless, smiling, was not what he expected. Warlord Varrock had crushed fleets, torn apart cybermarines with his bare claws, and burned entire villages to ash. But right now, he wasn't sure if he should shoot or listen. Kane stopped a few feet away and looked up at the alien giant. "I'm not here to fight," he said, his voice calm and clear. Varrock raised an eyebrow. "Then you are a fool." "Maybe," Kane replied. "But I'm also the only person willing to walk in here without backup. That says something, doesn't it?" The warlord tilted his head. Around them, a dozen Gorak soldiers raised their rifles, claws on triggers. But Varrock held up one hand. "Not yet. I've heard about your kind," Varrock said slowly. "Humans. Loud, fragile, reckless." Kane gave a half shrug. Not wrong, but also resourceful, surprising, and really good at getting out of impossible situations. Varrock chuckled, a low, rough sound. "And what do you want, little man?" "I want the prisoner," Kane said, eyes steady. "Alive, unharmed." "You think you can just walk in here and ask nicely?" Kane's smile faded slightly. "No, I walked in here because I know what you're really doing." The guards tensed. Varrock narrowed his eyes. "You're not just holding a scientist. You're baiting us. You're testing how far we'll go to get him back. But here's the thing, this war isn't about winning anymore. It's about reputation, and you don't want to lose to a human." There was a long pause. One of the Gorak soldiers stepped forward, growling, "Let me shoot him now." Varrock didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on Kane. "You risked your life to say that?" "I risked my life to give you a choice," Kane replied. "Because if I die, you become the warlord who executed an unarmed man who came to talk. That spreads. That stains your honor." Varrock's jaw tightened. "And if I live," Kane continued, "then you're the one who negotiated with a human and walked away smarter." It was a gamble, a dangerous one. But Kane knew something most aliens didn't. They thought humans were emotional, weak, wild. What they didn't understand was that those very things made them dangerous. Across the galaxy, there were quiet stories, hushed tales in alien bars and war briefings. Stories of humans who refused to die, who laughed while bleeding, who bit enemies with their teeth when weapons failed, who smiled in the face of death, just like Kane was doing now. The stories were never confirmed. Just whispers, myths, but they were enough to make generals hesitate. Varrock finally stepped back. "I don't trust you." "Human," he growled. "That's fair," Kane said. "I don't trust myself half the time." Varrock's eyes glowed. "You want your scientist back? Prove your worth. You survive the blood game, you walk out with him." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Blood game? Ancient trial of survival. One man, one arena, 1 hour. If you live, you earn my respect." Kane didn't blink. "When do we start?" "Now." Without warning, 2 guards grabbed him and dragged him down a hallway. Kane didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just walked, like he knew this was always part of the plan. Back in the stealth ship, The team finally picked up a weak signal, a camera feed from inside the Gorak fortress. It showed Kane being taken into a metal chamber, stripped of his armor, and dropped into a dark pit. "What is this?" one of the soldiers asked, voice shaking. Trevek clenched his jaw. "They're testing him." Another soldier said, "Heal." "Never survive, no one has." But Trevek didn't answer. Because deep inside, a thought was forming, quiet, strange, and impossible to ignore. What if the human knew exactly what he was doing? In the arena, the lights snapped on. Kane stood alone. Around him, metal walls rose high. At the far end, a door began to open. He took a deep breath. "Let's see what all the fear is about," he whispered Dot, and then the creature came out. The real test had begun. The pit was silent. The walls of the arena gleamed under harsh red lights. Sergeant Kane stood still, his bare boots touching the cold metal floor. In front of him, the creature roared, a massive four-legged beast, black and armored, its eyes glowing blue. Its jaws dripped acid. The kind of creature that ends lives in seconds. The crowd above screamed for blood. Hundreds of Gorak warriors banged on metal, cheering. No one had ever survived this challenge, especially not a soft, flesh-covered human. But Kane didn't flinch. He stared at the beast like he was studying it, not fearing it. Back on the stealth ship, Commander Trevek was silent. The whole team watched the live feed. No one said a word. "He's dead," muttered one soldier. Trevek didn't answer. He was starting to remember something. Something buried deep in the old war logs. 20 years ago, during the siege of Varnak, a small colony was invaded by a stronger alien force. That force expected easy victory, but the colony held out for 9 days. The attackers found civilians using homemade traps, turning farm tools into weapons. They found mothers hiding children underground and old men fighting with fire in their eyes. By the time reinforcements arrived, the attackers had lost more than half their army. The planet, Earth. The species? Human. Trevek had read the report. He hadn't believed it. Now he wasn't so sure. In the pit, the beast charged. Kane didn't move until the last second. Then he rolled, quick and low, and the monster's claws missed him by inches. He grabbed a sharp piece of broken metal from the floor and drove it into the creature's leg. It roared in pain. He didn't try to kill it. Not yet. He studied it, its movements, its blind spots, its weakness. Kane wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. But he was something far more dangerous. He was a learner. Above, the Gorak warlord watched with narrowed eyes. "Strange," he said. "What is, Commander?" "Asked a guard. He's not trying to win," Varric replied. "He's trying to understand." In the ship, the team stared as Kane dodged again, then again. He moved with purpose now. Every step was calculated. One of the younger soldiers leaned toward Trevek. "Why are they so different?" Trevek didn't answer right away. He looked at the screen, eyes distant. "Do you know why humans were almost rejected from the Galactic Union?" He finally said. The soldier shook his head. "Because no one could understand them," Trevek continued. "Their biology is strange. They survive cold and heat better than most species. Their emotions are unstable. They form bonds with enemies. They cry when they kill. But they don't stop. No matter the odds, they don't surrender. And worst of all, they adapt fast." There was a long pause. The young soldier whispered, "Is that why they scare people?" "No," Trevek said quietly. "They scare people because they don't act like they want to survive. They act like they expect to die, but still fight anyway." The screen showed Kane climbing the arena wall, leading the creature into a trap. He leapt, kicked off the side, and landed behind it. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the metal shard again and drove it under the beast's jaw. The creature shrieked, staggered, and collapsed. Dead. Kane stood over it, breathing hard, covered In blood and acid. The crowd was silent, then slowly. They began to cheer. Not mockingly. Not with hate. With respect. Warlord Varrock stood. Bring him to me. Minutes later, Kane walked into the war room, still barefoot, still bleeding, but standing tall. Varrock studied him. You should be dead. Probably, Kane replied. But not today. You could have run, surrendered. Kane smirked. Where I come from, we don't surrender to bullies. The warlord walked around him slowly. You are not the first human I have seen fight like this. Years ago, one of your kind escaped a prison camp by convincing the guards to turn on each other. Another crashed on a death moon and survived alone for 2 months. Kane nodded. Sounds about right. Varrock sat. I don't understand your kind. Kane leaned forward. That's because your kind looks for power and size, weapons. Armies, my kind. We survive because we never stop learning. We feel everything. Pain, fear, loss, and we keep going anyway. There was a silence in the room. Even the guards were still. Then Varrock gave a slow nod. You have earned your reward. The door opened. Dr. Zeltar was brought in alive. Though bruised, he looked at Kane with disbelief. You ... Actually came for me. Kane helped him stand. Yeah, that's kind of our thing. As they prepared to leave, Varrock raised his voice one last time. Tell your leaders this. You want to win this war? Then keep sending humans. Kane paused, then smiled. Oh, don't worry, they will. Back on the ship, as Kane stepped aboard with the rescued scientist, the team watched in stunned silence. No one joked. No one mocked him now. Travak saluted. A real salute. Kane just shrugged. All that for one guy, huh? Travak replied, You just reminded us why every team needs one of you. Kane sat down, leaned back, and closed his eyes. Good, because I've got a feeling this war is just getting started. And outside the window, Veteran 7 kept burning. But hope ... had just walked back in. Asterisk, the enemy thought the blood game was over. But Sergeant Kane knew better. The moment he and Dr. Zeltar boarded the extraction ship, alarms began blaring across the Gorak base. The warlord had honored the deal, yes. But Kane also understood something dangerous. In war, honor rarely survives the next chain of command. Sure enough, as their ship lifted off the rocky ground, it was immediately locked onto by surface-to-air missiles. A second Gorak commander had taken control in Varrock's absence, and he had no intention of letting the human leave alive. Missiles incoming, the pilot shouted. Travak gritted his teeth. Evasive pattern now. The ship twisted sharply to the right. Everyone on board stumbled. Kane grabbed a railing with one hand and pulled Dr. Zeltar back to safety with the other. Another explosion rocked the sky behind them. That was too close. One of the alien soldiers yelled. Kane's voice stayed calm. They don't want to let us go. Not after what they saw me do in that pit. Travak looked at him. You survived the blood game. No one ever has. That's the thing, Kane said. You think I won. But the game's still going. Their ship didn't make it to orbit. Just as they reached the outer atmosphere, a swarm of Gorak drones surrounded them like a metal cloud. Too many, too fast. The engines screamed. Systems failed. The ship was forced to crash land, again. Back on the planet they'd nearly escaped. Only this time, they were deeper in enemy territory. The wreckage burned behind them as the team pulled themselves from the ruins. The scientist was alive but weak. The pilot was gone. The communication system fried. We're trapped, one of the soldiers said. We're surrounded, said another. No, Kane replied. We're in the middle of their hunting ground now. Travak drew his plasma blade. So what's the plan, human? Kane looked around the broken landscape. Rocks, ash, twisted metal. He smiled. We give them a new game. Within minutes, Kane had the team moving, not panicking, moving. He instructed the squad to spread out, use the terrain, and set traps using whatever scrap was left from the crash. They were confused at first. Why take the fight to the enemy? But Kane had a different goal. The Gorok hunted like predators, fast, direct, confident. Humans? They hunted like ghosts. Hours passed. The sun vanished. The red moon of Vecran 7 rose above them like a blood-stained eye. And then came the first. Strike. A group of Gorok scouts approached the wreckage. One stepped on a tripwire Kane had made using a melted power cable and a broken drone battery. It exploded, taking 3 down at once. Another group found Travak waiting in the shadows. His blade flashed, and they fell in seconds. But Kane was the one they feared most. He moved through the smoke and rocks like a shadow. No heavy armor, no glowing gear. Just a knife, a scavenged pistol, and eyes that never blinked. Every time the Gorok thought they had him cornered, he vanished. He turned their confidence into confusion. Their power into panic. This was not the blood game they controlled. This was his, one by one. The alien squad began to see it, not just his tactics, but the reason he fought like this. Why are you doing this? One asked during a short rest. Sat against a rock, catching his breath. Because if we just run, we stay prey. But if we turn around and become the hunters, they'll remember us. Travak looked at him. Even if we die? Kane's eyes didn't flinch. Especially if we die. Suddenly, it made sense. The reason humans were now added to every elite rescue team, not for their size, not their weapons, but their will, a kind of madness mixed with courage. The kind that didn't wait for permission. The kind that flipped. The board when the game didn't make sense. By morning, the Gorok had pulled back. Too many losses. Too much confusion. They weren't built for chaos. But Kane was. In the silence that followed, the team rebuilt a signal relay from scavenged drone parts. Within hours, a new ship came, a real extraction, high orbit. Safe. This time, they left the planet for good. As the stars wrapped around them and the wounded were treated. Travak stood beside Kane near the ship's rear window. You should've died back there, the alien commander said. Should've, Kane replied. Travak nodded slowly. We've had many strong soldiers on missions like these. But only with a human do they end like this. Kane said nothing at first. Then he looked out the window toward the dying red planet below. You ever hear of the first blood game? Travak raised an eyebrow. No. Kane smiled faintly. It was called Earth. We've been playing it since the day we learned to walk upright. We hunt, we fight, we fall, we rise. The rules change. The pain stays, but we don't stop. He looked back at the commander. Now do you understand why we survive? Travak didn't reply. He simply stared at the human and nodded. For the first time, not as a superior, but as an equal. And somewhere in the distance, the galaxy continued to turn. But those who had seen what happened on Vecran 7 would never forget. In every mission, where survival was impossible, there would always be one phrase whispered in the dark. Send a human. Asterisk. The extraction ship hummed quietly as it floated in low orbit over Vecran 7. The stars outside seemed peaceful, calm, even, but inside the ship, tension was rising. Fast. Commander Travak stood at the main console, staring at the data screen. His silver hands were clenched behind his back. His sharp eyes locked on one blinking dot. It wasn't moving. Not anymore. It's him, the tech officer said. Dr. Zeltar's signal confirmed. He's been relocated. Travak nodded. They moved him again. They know we're coming, Kane said from behind him. The human was already geared up, but not like the others. No heavy armor, no oversized weapons. Just a modified sidearm, a knife, and a lightweight chest plate. He wore no helmet. He liked to see the enemy clearly. Gorok forces have built a trap around the scientist, the officer continued. New species assisting them. We think it's the Creel. Travak turned. The Creel? Mercenaries? Worse, Kane muttered. Mercenaries with no code. Kane already understood the risk. This wasn't just about saving a hostage anymore. The enemy was testing limits, trying to see how far the Union would go for a single life. Or more importantly, how far a human would go. The ship broke through cloud cover. Beneath them stood a large, burned-out facility, half lab, half fortress. The air was thick with smoke and heat. Gorak patrols circled outside with energy rifles. And flying drones dot inside the building. Dr. Zeltar lay on the floor of a locked chamber, tied to a chair with strange metal restraints. He looked weak, hungry, and afraid, but still alive. There was one problem. The room was wired with a bomb, not just any bomb. A proximity-based neural detonator, designed to explode the moment someone stepped too close or spoke the wrong word, and the only person who could disarm it was dead. The ship landed in a clearing nearby. Kane led the team forward through smoke and rubble. He moved ahead of the others, low, silent, focused. As always, when they reached the outer wall, Travak held up a hand. We should wait. Gather more intel, maybe find another way in. But Kane was already moving. No time. He doesn't have another hour in there. The others stayed behind, watching him disappear into the structure alone. Again, inside, the halls were dark and hot. The walls cracked with heat damage. Kane moved through them like he had lived there once, his breathing slow, his steps exact. He reached the door. The chamber where the scientist was held. Through a small window, he could see Dr. Zeltar's eyes. Widened. The scientist mouthed, "It's a trap." Kane gave a small nod. He already knew. He stepped inside anyway. The bomb beeped softly. Dr. Zeltar whispered, "It's linked to my pulse. If I get too scared, it blows." Kane knelt down in front of him, calm as ever. "Then don't be scared." "How?" the scientist asked, trembling. Kane smiled softly. "Because I'm going to tell you a story." Dr. Zeltar blinked, confused. Kane began talking, his voice low and steady. "A story from Earth, from when he was a boy. About a storm that had hit his hometown. About how his mother lit candles in the dark and told him stories to keep him calm. About how fear can be quieted when someone refuses to let it grow. As Kane spoke, he slowly examined the bomb. Wires, pulse links, motion sensors. The kind of thing that would scare most engineers into freezing. But not Kane. He didn't need to be the smartest. He just needed to stay calm. Outside the chamber, a Creel sniper took aim through the window. Inside, Kane didn't blink. His hands moved gently, cutting the red wire. Not because a manual told him to, but because the red wire was just a little warmer than the others. Someone had connected it last. That was always the power line. Click. The bomb stopped blinking. Dr. Zeltar's eyes filled with tears. "You how did you know?" Kane shrugged. "I didn't." He smiled again. "I guessed." Then he stood up. The building suddenly shook. Explosions outside. The Gorak were attacking the ship now. The rest of the team was under fire. Kane grabbed Zeltar's arm. "We're not done yet." They moved fast. Kane shot down 2 guards in the hallway and used a smoke bomb to cover their escape. Outside, Travak was holding the defensive line with 3 others. Plasma fire lit up the sky. The ship's pilot screamed into the comms, "We can't hold much longer." Kane and the scientist broke through the doors. "Now!" Kane shouted. Travak saw them and charged forward, slicing down a Creel soldier with brutal force. The squad fell back as the ship's ramp lowered. Kane pushed Dr. Zeltar on board, then turned to cover the rear. He fired 3 clean shots, 1 to the head, 1 to the knee, 1 to the gun, disabling the last attacker. As the ship lifted off, the battlefield below faded into red fire and black smoke. Kane sat down beside the scientist, covered in dirt and sweat. Dr. Zeltar looked at him for a long time. "You saved me, twice." Yeah, well, Kane replied, we've got a reputation to keep. Trevek came over. This mission should have failed. Like all the others before it. Kane didn't reply. Trevek added, but it didn't. Because of you. The human looked up. Double quotes, no. Because I refused to fail. Outside, the stars grew brighter. The fire of Vecran 7 fell behind them, and as the ship vanished into the dark, one thing became clear. This was never just about rescue. It was about a message. Warning. A promise. When everything else breaks, you send a human. Asterisk. For the first time in years, the Gorak Command Council issued a silent alert across their war network. Human confirmed on field. Engagement status. Caution. They didn't admit fear, they just called it caution. But the truth was something far louder in their hearts. Kane had lived. Worse, he had escaped. Worst of all, he had taken one of their high-value hostages with him and made them look weak doing it. So they answered the insult with fury. Within hours of the rescue, 3 Gorak warships were dispatched from orbit. Not scouts. Not drones, warships, heavy. Fast. Armed. Trevak's extraction vessel wasn't designed for combat. It was a stealth ship. Quiet, small. Perfect for slipping in and out of danger zones. But slipping out was no longer an option. Inside the ship, alarms screamed, incoming. Shouted the navigator, multiple contacts. Gorak battle signatures confirmed. Weapons locked. Trevak turned to the crew. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. But Kane was already walking to the front. Too late for that, he said calmly. They want blood. He stared at the tactical screen. The enemy ships were already closing in, one above. 2 flanking from either side. Traps in the sky. We can't outrun them, the pilot said. And we can't outgun them. Kane nodded. Then we outthink them. No one moved. No one even breathed. Trevak tilted his head. You have a plan? Kane smirked. I've got something better. Improvisation. He leaned over the screen, scanning the terrain below. See that canyon? He pointed. If we fly low through it, real tight, they'll follow. They'll think they're cornering us. That's suicide, said the pilot. Exactly, Kane replied. So they'll never expect what comes next. The ship dove. Outside, the sky turned into a wall of smoke and fire. Behind them, the 3 enemy warships gave chase, dropping lower and lower, engines screaming. Inside the narrow canyon, rocks tore at the sides of the ship, sparks flew. The hull groaned. Too tight. Someone yelled, "Keep steady, Kane." Ordered, "We need another 20 seconds." A new alarm lit up. They're charging weapons. Kane smiled. Good. Asterisk. At the last moment, he pulled up a holographic panel, linked to the ship's leftover fuel cells. He rerouted them into the rear exhaust vents. Brace yourselves. The pilot screamed as the ship hit a burst of speed and launched vertically. Straight out of the canyon. Behind them, the Gorak ships tried to match, but Kane had already ignited the leaking cells in the canyon floor. The entire trench exploded in a chain. Reaction, fire chasing up the walls. The first enemy ship didn't make it. The second tried to pull away. Too slow. Only one ship escaped the blast. But Kane wasn't finished. He turned to Trevak. "Get me to the guns," Trevak blinked. "You know how to operate our systems? I'll figure it out." Kane ran to the manual weapon controls. Not automated, not perfect, but deadly in the right hands. Human hands. As the last Gorak ship looped around for another strike, Kane watched its movement like a hunter. He didn't fire immediately. He waited. Calculated. Predicted. And when the enemy opened fire, he fired first. 2 clean shots. One hit the engine. The second hit the command bridge. The warship tumbled, spiraling, crashing into the side of a nearby asteroid. Silence. No more enemy signals. Back on board, the crew stared at Kane like they were seeing him for the first time. Trevak stepped forward. "You're not just a soldier," he said. "You're something else." Kane looked at him. "I'm human. That's what we do when everything goes wrong. We get creative." The others began nodding, quiet respect. A shift had happened. This wasn't just a human on the mission anymore, Dot. This was the human they wanted on every mission. Kane walked back to the medical bay where Dr. Zeltar was recovering. The scientist opened one eye. "You're still alive? Disappointed?" Kane asked, grinning. "Relieved," the scientist replied weakly. "You have a gift." Kane shrugged. "I'm not special. Earth has millions like me. The only difference is ... I was sent." He turned and walked to the viewing window. The stars stretched beyond them, vast and endless. Trevak joined him. "Command will want a full report." "Give them one," Kane said. "Make sure it ends with this. If you're sending an elite team into a war zone, you better send a human with them." "Why?" Kane's voice dropped, quiet, steady. "Because we don't just fight. We adapt. We don't just survive. We overcome. And when everything's falling apart, we become exactly what the enemy never prepared for." Outside, the last flames of battle burned behind them. But Kane didn't look back. He was already thinking about the next mission, the next impossible task. Because for people like him, war wasn't just a job. It was where they proved, again and again, what it meant to be human. 3 days had passed since the battle over Vakron 7. The fires on the surface had finally gone out. What remained was ash, silence, and wreckage, the bones of a mission that should have failed. But DIDN, single quotes T. Far above the dead world, aboard a high-orbit Union warship, Commander Trevak sat in front of a glowing console, the words, "Final. Mission report. Pending submission," blinking at the top of the screen. He had been staring at it for almost an hour. Behind him, crew members worked quietly, avoiding eye contact. Even now, the story of what happened was spreading through comms, ships, and strategy halls. Not just about the success of the mission. Not just about the rescued scientist or the destroyed enemy ships. No, the real story was about the human, about Sergeant Kane, the soldier who walked into death and came back with a smile. The one who treated war not as a duty, but as a puzzle to outthink. The one who had reminded the entire galaxy why humans were never to be underestimated, and never left out again. Trevak finally leaned forward and began typing. "Mission ID 1349A7, high-value target extraction, classified priority. Objective, retrieve Dr. Zeltar from enemy territory. Status, success. Casualties, minimal. Unexpected variable, human involvement. Sergeant Kane." He paused, then erased the word variable. He replaced it with advantage. Outside the viewing bay, the stars shone brighter than ever. Not because the universe had changed, but because someone in it had reminded them all of something ancient and simple, that sometimes survival wasn't about technology, or strategy, or numbers. Sometimes it was about refusing to quit. Trevak continued typing. Observation. Human decision-making is erratic, often emotional, and rarely by the book. However, this mission confirms what many whispered but never wrote. A human is not the strongest warrior, nor the most advanced mind. But when added to a squad, something shifts. Plans become unpredictable. Enemy patterns break. Morale increases. Survivability climbs. Why? Because humans bring chaos, but controlled chaos. Not the kind that destroys, the kind that saves. He leaned back and closed his eyes, the images still fresh. Kane walking into the enemy base alone. Kane surviving. The blood gain. Kane defusing the bomb not with skill, but with calm storytelling and empathy. Kane turning a doomed canyon chase into a tactical ambush. And most of all, Kane never bragging, never asking for praise. Just doing what needed to be done, because someone had to. Revek reopened his eyes and typed the final lines of his report. Recommendation. From this day forward, no high-value target extraction team should be deployed without at least one human operative, not for strength, not for speed, but for something far more valuable: unbreakable will, relentless instinct, adaptive courage. Because when the enemy believes they've won, that's exactly when a human starts planning how to turn the tide. This is not tradition. This is not strategy. This is necessity. He hit submit. Across the galaxy, that report reached every military command in the Union within hours, and it changed everything. Training programs were updated. Squad formations were restructured. Psychological warfare units added new chapters to their manuals. But, most importantly, a new rule was written in every extraction protocol in bold red letters: always send one human. On a quiet observation deck, far from all the noise, Kane stood alone, looking out at the stars. He wore no armor now. Just a simple jacket and tired eyes. He wasn't thinking about glory, or medals, or headlines. He was thinking about home. About Earth. About how far they'd come, from fragile creatures with sticks and fire, to being the one thing the galaxy feared and respected most. Trevek joined him, silent for a moment. You know, the alien said, there's already a rumor spreading. Kane smirked. Oh yeah? What's this one about? That you can't be killed. That you walk into death because you've already made peace with it. Kane chuckled softly. Let them believe that. You're not scared? Kane's voice was quiet now. I've been scared my whole life. That's what makes us human. We don't fight because we're fearless. We fight because we're afraid, and we do it anyway. Trevek nodded slowly. I never understood your kind. Until now. Kane looked up at the stars. We're not here to be understood, he said. We're here to remind the universe that we belong. A long silence stretched between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was respectful. And as Kane turned and walked down the corridor, boots echoing against metal floors, the alien commander realized something deep in his chest. The enemy had lost more than a battle. They had awakened a legend, not of a single man, but of a species, a force, a name whispered in the dark when everything else had failed: humanity.